I'd like to call this meeting to order. Okay. Can we have a roll call?
Yes, Board Member Mitchell,
Present.
Whalen,
Present.
Soldwich,
Present.
and Dash.
Present.
Excuse me, so sorry. I'd like to have a motion for the agenda approval.
So moved.
Second. Do we need roll call on that?
All in favor?
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And now for minutes approval for the August 2nd, 2023 meeting minutes. Do we have an approval of last month meeting minutes? So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, then we have a new business this evening to consider a request from Ben Schulte on behalf of Mark Fox for a variance for property identified as parcel number 490-24360481. Do we have a report from you over there?
So Ben has submitted a variance request on behalf of Mark Fox. They're the property owners. If approved, the request would allow for an accessory structure front yard area. The property is currently unaddressed, but identified as above. So just to summarize the request, this shows sort of like the drawing where everything in this location would be. In this variance request, it would allow for this accessory to remain in the front yard area. The new proposed house would be located. The property doesn't contain a primary structure right now. It would dwelling. And this just shows, I wasn't sure if it would be one sitting. So I just, again, this is the accessory structure. This is house location. The city zoning code, chapter 16504 sets the regulations for the location and setbacks of all accessory structures, which just notes that accessory buildings and structures shall only be erected to the rear of any principal building. No accessory structure. To overview the findings of fact, which all must be found favorably by the Board of Adjustment. Approved. The first asks whether special conditions or circumstances exist that aren't applicable to other zoned properties. This property is zoned for the R1 single family residential detached zoning district. The property is nearly 8 acres in size and fronts along South G Street. In staff's review, it was determined that the property characteristics do not exist, or that property characteristics do not exist. Property owner is presented with two alternatives to the variance. The first is to locate the dwelling in front of the accessory structure, which to the size and scale of the structure proposed would be feasible. The other alternative would be to relocate or remove the accessory structure with zoning. Additionally, if the structure was listed on a national or local register for context, however, the structure isn't located on it. Likewise, it's unknown, at least to staff, whether the structure could be placed on a registry. Any renovations or additions that may have taken place, which could impact its historic relevance and its. Second finding of fact asks if a right would be deprived of the property. Please review this criteria could not be met as the property owner with other property owners in the R1 not have. The third asks whether conditions or hardships experienced by the applicant are self-imposed. In this instance, because the property owner does have two alternatives to the variance. It could be determined that in this instance that it is. And then the last finding of fact asks whether a special privilege applicant that is structures or buildings within the same zoning district. Variances are typically granted when a property owner hardship, which would disenfranchise accessory structures being located to the rear is not a right that property owners have, or in the front yard area isn't a common right for all property owners. If in this instance, if it were to be granted, it would give a right that the property owner have, or it would give a right that other property owners don't have. Whereas in other situations, apply for a building permit and there was an accessory front yard area, those would be administered. So this finding of fact is also not be. Some points to consider, the variance request isn't one or more of the zoning code. The property owner is able to cite the new construction that would be in compliance with the zoning code. Locate and remove the accessory structure. The structure in question is not registered as a historical place or structure with the state historical preservation. Granting the variance would provide a right have under the hardship would not exist if the request was denied, as the applicant could make reasonable. So for these reasons, applicant is recommending to the Board of Adjustment that if the variance is to be to include like in the minutes of the reasonings.
Any questions from the staff for Emily?
Charlotte, I asked a couple of questions, not to get past open meeting laws, but just general ones regarding the building codes. Could you there's just two really that are important. When they went into effect and the size of buildings and how many you could have.
Give me just a second, let me find that email so I don't miss anything. We're getting all messed up, but that was yesterday, right?
2 days ago.
He asked on August.
Mine says yesterday, so I think you did respond yesterday, Tuesday. If you can't find it,
I'm sorry. For the
Now
holiday.
it's here.
okay. And you sent it first to me and everybody was copied. I just think it's good to have the information out. And I will say, it would be good, and maybe there's a place easy to find on the city's website, but it's hard to find those codes. I mean, you can find them. Because after I sent it, I did some hunting and I found it, but it'd be great if it was someplace easy, and especially for accessory structures to have that like another, we repost that all the time on on like a Facebook or Instagram or something, so people see it all the time. We're good.
I have a tab on the,
On your last point, one thing I know we've been working on the staff level is trying to get more guides like that out there.
So that
Yeah, a lot more than we had earlier this summer that we didn't have that are out there right now, but yeah, we'll keep working on that. On the code stuff, there's different programs. The issue with our code program right now through, I think it's Simmer and Corey, it's really difficult to read our code online. As a matter of fact, we don't use that service. We have our own PDF document that we go to because it's much easier to read. So I completely sympathize with you on that. But one thing that we know we need to look at. To your questions. So there was 4 questions. First was, when were our current and new city planning and zoning codes effective? I noted that those were adopted by the city council on July 19th of 21, and they went into effect on July 29th of 2021. Then within the guidelines of new codes, is a property allowed to have 2 or more large additional buildings? And I just cited the section of code Emily put in her presentation, but what it says is accessory buildings and structures shall be limited to a maximum of 2 total buildings, including a garage, of which the total of all accessory buildings shall not occupy more than 10% of the total lot area, nor exceed a total square footage of 1,800 square feet. The
other way.
answer number three was, what is the maximum square footage of additional buildings allowed? And then 4 was, does the city have any date on paving the unpaved portion of South G? And I know that that is not a project that we have programmed currently in our capital improvements program.
Any other questions for the staff?
Any word from neighbors?
No, I haven't received anything. I know you were out last week and I don't know if anything came in at all this week, but we sent notifications out on this one. I think we required 10 days and I think they actually went out almost 15 days ahead of time on this one. So well in advance.
Like to present?
I guess from a neighbor standpoint,
Would you take the podium, please?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
from a neighbor standpoint, they actually asked if they could come to support us. I said that wouldn't be necessary. I guess it should have come. I'm a bit surprised at the interpretation of some of these things, partially because it didn't address any of the things that I submitted. It didn't talk about any of that. I'm not sure why I did that at all. It would be disappointing if this got denied. I think we would have to consider whether we'll be building here. Frankly, at a loss. I don't know, see if Ben, you want to have more, your emotions are more in check.
First of all, I'm Ben Schulte. Thanks for being here tonight. I believe that this is a unique situation. I build in developments in city limits all the time where we're confined to, smaller lot sizes and, we're restricted. And in those situations, I could see where, yeah, it makes sense to have any accessory structure behind the house. In this situation, we have 8 acres. The house is going to be located hundreds of feet from the barn. There is no possible way for this particular house that we've designed to fit in front of the barn with the city setbacks. It's not possible. We don't know exactly how old the barn is, but we have pictures that are dating back close to 100 years old. I personally don't want to be the one to be tearing down a 100-year-old barn. We've actually refurbished old barns, have gotten grants to, refurbish these old barns from the state of Iowa. I don't want to be the one to tear down an old one. What I see is unnecessary. I do understand where this is all coming from, but I don't think that the situation fits the reason why it is in the code book, in my opinion. So I look at this as a more of an acreage type build. It just happens to be inside of city limits. So
What are the plans for the barn as far as aesthetics?
well, currently the barn is in great shape. It looks great. It's a white barn. It's got pretty fresh new steel on the roof. It's completely enclosed. It's not like it's a rotten barn that's fallen over and depleted. It's actually in very good shape, and currently right now it is being used for him to take care of his property with equipment that he's storing inside. Obviously this size of house it's not gonna happen overnight. It's gonna take many, many months to build this house. And we plan to use that barn as a storage facility to continue storing his tractor, his mowers, all that stuff in there, during the construction and on down the line. So we'd like to leave it as is so that we can continue to use it for what it's meant to be used for. So
If this isn't approved, wouldn't you be able to continue, if it's not approved and if it doesn't have to be removed, if you opt not to move it, and I understand, I live on 4 acres in town. So I know I have an idea of the equipment you're using. But wouldn't you be able to, if you don't have to tear it down until, or move it until after the build, after your build is complete, you'll have another large building that you could then put your tractor or lawnmowers or however you mow, and I
What
understand.
kind of cost would that involve to move a barn
I don't think that this,
behind?
sorry, I don't mean to speak out of
No,
turn,
you're fine.
but I don't believe that moving the barn is going to be an option in this situation. I don't think that trying to pick up this barn and take it off of its current foundation is going to be feasible, financially feasible, number one, and just keeping the structure together, number two, so.
You
Sorry.
did submit,
Oh, that's true. Mark brought up a good point where the house is going to be located. It starts dropping off. Just from front of the house to the back of the house, we have about an 8-foot elevation change. So, I mean, we wouldn't be able to even get the barn. We wouldn't find a place to put it behind where the house is going to be located. Anyway,
It looks flat when you're out there, but I know how elevation drops off.
it's deceiving. It's very deceiving for sure.
you had submitted several neighbors. Properties and structures and so forth. So do you want to tell us a little bit about those and what the neighbors are?
Well, I think if you drive down the street, you're gonna see multiple barns in front of the houses on other similar situations. I'm assuming that they've all been grandfathered in, and this is actually gonna be no different. That barn actually used to belong to the house, to the neighbor to the north of the barn there. It was part of that property where it was, recently carved out. So that neighbor especially does not want to see the barn tore down, moved, or likewise, yes, so.
Because they lived in there prior to what the dates are. Have they lived there a long time?
They bought the house, I think 2 years ago.
Right, yeah. Yeah. And there are other buildings that are very close to the road. And if I was to the west side of those buildings, I'd be disappointed to move in there and see those buildings there. So I don't think and I'm sure those happened all prior to before the codes were in place, would be my guess. I'm sure they've been there for a while. So I do understand that, but it's hard when codes change and we try to make adjustments for that.
And I'm not disregarding that. I just think that this situation is a much more unique situation than 95% of the builds that are happening here in Indianola, where you're confined to a lot size of 10, 12,000 square feet, not 7, 8 acres.
Another piece of the code, isn't it, that ancillary buildings are supposed to to have the feel of whatever the residential house looks like. Again, does it work for the white barn? And from the road, the white barn looks like a nice barn. But that's another piece of it, the code.
Paint
that
would
is-
take care of that though, correct? I
Pardon
mean, paint, if there were to be a situation.
I think isn't the code like
Colors and materials.
colors and
all that
materials?
stuff. Yeah, and again, depending on how you guys are all going, that's obviously for new structures too, so.
How far? Let's see a picture, but tell me, how far from the barn to the house?
It's roughly 650 feet past the barn. Yeah,
No, I'm asking that question relative to aesthetics. I mean, it's one thing if the structure is right here, relative to it, and they don't match, but I think this is a bit different, being such a distance away and not on a main thoroughway. I mean, yes, it's in city limits, but
8 acres.
it's 8 acres and it's 8 acres this way. And I know city plans can change for paving, but I'm not sure it'll ever be a thorough way.
Still meets setback requirements, doesn't it? It still meets setback requirements?
Yeah,
Okay, so wouldn't have any issues there for future roadways.
I was just looking at it from my perspective and just, I think the barn's set back 135 feet from the right of way line, so you're probably about 150 almost from the road, so.
Question, to the homeowner, did you look at the codes before, when you bought the land?
The land was listed as ready to build
Oh, well,
and
and
I,
it is ready, I guess it is
and the
ready
codes,
to build.
the code specifically from my interpretation when I read it, because I've looked at it, I've been trying to build in town for a while. Was that no new construction could be done. I was not under the impression by my interpretation. Now I don't do this every day, but that a building would, pre-existing building would have to then be destroyed.
It was marketed having a building on it.
He was my realtor and one of our, gonna be doing the road as well, or was gonna be doing the road.
May I ask how long ago you purchased?
About a year, 12 months ago, give or take, I think it was Mother's Day.
Middle of 22, so there was, that was one of the things I've looked at, was that when did the codes go into place? Because we've had a situation that things happened prior to, you know, as the codes were changing to compared to understand the codes. I understand that, but the one piece that is, it does state is that can have buildings out in front of your home.
You have access to it, can you? I think I put it in there, doesn't it say no new construction?
The code piece?
Yeah. I'm just curious. I believe I put a snippet of that.
That's a good. I'll look in your piece, but I didn't see that in your piece.
Only be erected. The rear, my interpretation of that was that it needed to be built, not.
Yeah, that page.
15 of 20.
I think
It's
what
like,
Mark's trying,
it has that sentence that it says, accessory buildings and structures shall only be erected to the rear of a principal
Correct.
building, period. No accessory structure shall be located in between any principal building and any street.
And that's referring to new construction, not existing.
It doesn't state it
It
that way.
doesn't state it that way.
Could it be, I don't know.
And the photos that you have on page 17 of 20, are these aerial views of the properties that have accessory structures in front of a home? Is that what you're?
Half of them are that and half of them are that have
Not.
more than one in structure. Basically, the two variance things that were brought up. Half of those structures are in front of the main dwelling and half of them are more than two dwelling or two buildings. That's almost all of the acreage size properties there.
I know what the code state did everything together and by the code, it's very clear. I think it's, for lack of a better word, just a shame to take such a nice, potentially historical structure that's in excellent shape and to destroy it in order for a property owner to build what looks like an amazing structure, amazing home on 8 acres. Yes, it's in the city, but like I said before, I don't think it'll ever be throwaway. And I don't think that the barn will ever be an eyesore. That's an assumption on this drawing. So I would I would encourage board to think about that relative to what, there's no other property if decide not to.
It's a unique property.
It's a unique property and the next person is going to have the same thing. So is this property then just not
A dead property,
right?
dead piece of land within.
Unless the
town.
structure is removed.
Yes. Really quick, I just want to jump in. Last month, we kind of talked about road classifications and that came up. And just so you know, South G Street, we show no plans of that ever going through. It should remain according to our plans here, dead end, and it is a local road. So it is not a thoroughfare, collector or arterial road. But I just wanted to make sure that.
That's a plus. for-
That's a
Yeah.
plus. And I also, I mean, yes, drove down there the other day and did I study every neighbor and every structure? No. But I also don't see those structures going away. Don't see this, if this barn is allowed to remain a structure, I don't see it sticking out like a sore thumb relative to the neighborhood.
So if you built a discussion point, if you built across the street, would you mind seeing the barn?
I would
I wouldn't either, as long as it was kept up.
So this strikes me as an unintended consequence of when the new code was put in place. Nobody envisioned that something like this would happen. On the one hand, on the other hand, here we go again, we're setting precedent so that the next person who has some other variation says, well, you let them do it, so now why don't you let me do it? And that's why codes were made in the first place, so that those exceptions don't take place. I'm just trying to touch upon the fact that this is a complicated case and that's not an easy black and white solution in any way whatsoever. You've touched upon all these things. I think we're all feeling them. It isn't just kind of an intellectual process. We understand, but it puts us in a really tight spot.
Well, it does have, I mean, with these other properties too, it's not a lone duck, so to speak.
No, but there's a couple of those other properties I wouldn't want to live across the street from. No,
Because
I
they
would live
have been
across from your barn before I'd live across from a couple of the other.
Sure.
There's also homes in town that,
Well, that's,
not just.
you can't say that, when I always use the example of when you win the lottery and move away, you never know if the next person's gonna take care of it like you. So hopefully
Not
they,
as-
Hopefully with
Away
8
from-
acres and a beautiful home like this, you wouldn't be
This is a
entertained.
home.
well,
Uh,
and I understand, and I truly understand that, but codes are supposed to be, for the betterment of all of us, so I do understand.
A variance that only sticks with him and then doesn't go on if he were to sell.
I don't know.
Well,
We've done that.
No, it's all- Yeah, variance typically
The
on
land.
the land. I mean, you can condition it to that effect, but,
Could you
It
condition it
wouldn't do any
to
good.
that? One, maybe it has to be painted the same color as the house, sort of blends in. Not maybe a barn color, that could be an issue. And two, if the structure ever comes down, it cannot be rebuilt there.
100%. The last part, that's code. I mean,
That
that's
is-
already there.
that-
Yeah, it's only applies to the structure here that is being requested. So if it were to be destroyed by a tornado or something like that, they would not have the ability with this variance that's granted, if it was granted, to put it in the same place without coming back with a new plan. And then the painting, yes, I mean,
Or if it got,
Yeah.
I don't
Or
think it's
fire,
a
you know.
it's 1900,
Yeah.
it's not a
Right.
1900 barn, it maybe is a 1950s barn,
1920.
which now is like, as you get older.
1930s at least, I mean,
We have a photo of it back in the 1930s and it seemed like it's been there for a while.
I'm sorry, I don't wanna do this wrong, but I needed some space. The difference between this, there's tin on it now compared to but the inside, the siding is all still there. I mean, and it's handmade beams with handmade nails. And I mean, our house is gonna be a natural wood for the most part. We could take down the tin, and make it natural. It will probably decay quicker, but it's been there for so long, it's no difference to us if it's got tin on it or.
If it's tin, couldn't you just paint it a color that looks like your
Can
wood?
I
Yeah.
butt in on this one?
Neutral.
So yeah, we could paint the tin. it's not necessarily preferred. I mean, usually when you buy the tin comes already pre-painted. So if we painted a color, it's not gonna hold up. It really won't.
Might
It'll
look
chip
weird.
off. It'll probably do more harm than good. And it'll take a lot more maintenance to do that. Beside the point, so the house that the barn used to belong to, I mean, it actually does match that whole dwelling. And is much, much closer to the barn than where the new structure is gonna be located. So it kind of. It's in with the neighbors to the north. I don't believe that, the barn is gonna be an eyesore either way. You're not gonna necessarily, the way the road's gonna wind around and with the trees that are gonna be lining the driveway. Chances are the barn and the house are not gonna necessarily be seen in the same view. At least that's the whole goal anyway.
I would like to say too, with my assumption that I made, if you're building a 2 million, said a $2 million home. I am making an assumption that every piece on the property, restructure on the property will be taken care of. And yes, hopefully you're there forever, but maybe not. But if someone else is gonna pay that price tag,
We're also gonna be as particular,
that's,
hopefully.
yeah, I know that's assumptions, but I
Right.
think they're pretty good.
Any other questions or comments for the staff or for the homeowner?
We take a vote and that, and I was against it, so I'll tell you that. But it's hard as long as I move that we approve it with the following stipulations. One, it cannot be rebuilt. And that there has to be some kind of trees, landscaping, something put in front of it. Because or to the side of it, around the pieces that you see from the road, which I think will help to blend it in, which maybe you had planned anyway, but.
Is it necessary to put that stipulation about it can't be rebuilt since that's code anyway?
That's code anyway.
We do it all the time. I mean, it's emphasizing, I think.
Yeah.
So.
Fine.
Good motion.
Just need a second.
I'll second it.
So let me just confirm what has been said. Did you come in the positive as far as we move to approve with these contingencies, correct? Okay, now we just need roll call on that,
Any other
correct?
discussion too?
Pardon me?
Any other discussion before?
Any other discussion?
Right. Mitchell? Soldwich?
Yes.
Bash? Swayman?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You guys.
I'm sorry, I got my emotions there. I just.
Oh.
Excited about this.
We're gonna have another.
The easiest thing, you just bulldoze it.
Acreages,
And I
I mean,
didn't
it
want to do
is.
that.
I
And
certainly want to keep you in our
Realtor.
community.
Yeah.
you understand the city codes before you sell something. I mean, I could understand, I had to go 10 years ago in front of it was planning and zoning at the time. Get our building approved, so I understand, but stick built.
Thank you.
And now it's time to go have a fancy beverage and celebrate.
Thank you, Will.
Emily, I'll resubmit. Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Appreciate your
you.
time.
Have a good evening. Any comments at this point? Anything? Okay. I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting. All in favor?
I
Aye.
have a birthday party.